What if everything you've been told about depression is completely wrong? What if Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor who revolutionized psychology and wrote the book that's helped over 10 million people transform their lives, discovered something shocking about what we call depression that could change your life forever? In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to reveal the 3 life-changing discoveries that Frankl made while surviving 4 concentration camps and treating thousands of patients afterward. But first, I need you to do something. Comment below and tell me, have you ever felt empty inside, even when everything in your life seemed fine? Because what you're about to learn challenges everything modern psychology teaches about mental health. Here are the 3 Frankl discoveries that will blow your mind. First, what we call depression is often existential starvation. Second, meaning can be found even in the worst suffering. And third, you have a choice that no one can take away from you. Let me start with a story that will change how you see everything. It's 1944. Viktor Frankl is standing in the freezing barracks of Auschwitz concentration camp. He's lost his wife, his parents, his life's work. A manuscript that took him years to write. Everything has been stripped away. By every measure of modern psychology, he should be completely broken. But wait. Here's where it gets interesting. Instead of falling into despair, Frankl makes an observation that would revolutionize how we understand human suffering. He notices something incredible about his fellow prisoners. The ones who survived weren't necessarily the physically strongest. They weren't the ones with the most food or the best conditions. The survivors were the ones who found meaning in their suffering. Hold on, because what I'm about to show you will blow your mind. Frankl discovered that humans can endure almost anything if they have a reason why. But here's the shocking part. In his post-war psychiatric practice, he found that patients living in comfort and safety were experiencing the same existential emptiness as concentration camp prisoners. This changes everything about how we understand what we call depression. Look, before we continue, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like something was missing from your life, even when you had everything you thought you wanted? That feeling isn't depression in the clinical sense. Frankl called it existential frustration, and it's become an epidemic in modern America. In 3 minutes, I'll show you the study that shocked even Harvard psychiatrists when Frankl presented it during his lectures there. But first, let me tell you what happened when Frankl returned to Vienna after the war. He rebuilt his life, wrote Man's Search for Meaning, and opened a psychiatric practice. Patient after patient came to him with the same complaint. "Doctor, I have everything I should want, but I feel empty inside." These weren't people with chemical imbalances. These weren't people with traumatic childhoods. These were successful Americans, Europeans, people with good jobs, loving families, comfortable lives. But they were starving for something that no antidepressant could provide. They were starving for meaning. Here's the thing most therapists missed, but Frankl understood from his concentration camp experience. Humans aren't primarily driven by pleasure like Freud thought. We're not primarily driven by power like Adler believed. We're driven by the search for meaning. And when that search is frustrated, we experience what Frankl called the existential vacuum. Now listen to this carefully. In his clinical practice, Frankl treated over 40,000 patients using a revolutionary approach he developed called logotherapy. The word logos means meaning in Greek. Instead of focusing on past trauma or chemical imbalances, logotherapy helps people discover their unique purpose. But before we get to the most important part, let me share the study that changed everything. Frankl and his colleagues surveyed thousands of people across different countries and economic backgrounds. What they found was shocking. Over 80% of people reported feeling that life was meaningless or that they were just going through the motions. This wasn't limited to any particular age group, income level, or social status. The existential vacuum had become a mass phenomenon. Wait until you hear what happened next in one of Frankl's most famous cases. A successful businessman came to Frankl's office in Vienna. This man had everything, wealth, family, status, but he was consumed by thoughts of suicide. He told Frankl, "Doctor, I have no reason to live. Life is meaningless." Instead of prescribing medication or diving into childhood, Memories, Frankl asked him one simple question. If you were to die today, who would miss you most? The man immediately thought of his young son. Frankl continued, what would happen to your son if you weren't here to guide him, to be his example, to help him become the man he's meant to be? Suddenly, this successful businessman broke down, crying, not from despair but from recognition. He had found his meaning, being the father his son needed. That single session transformed his life completely. This technique I'm about to reveal in Minute 7 has transformed millions of lives worldwide. But here's where Frankl's approach gets revolutionary. He understood that meaning can't be given to you. It has to be discovered by you. And there are 3 sources where every human being can find meaning, even in the worst circumstances. Frankl discovered something that most psychologists missed completely. While working with prisoners in the concentration camps, and later with patients in his practice, he identified 3 fundamental ways humans find meaning. These aren't theories, they're battle-tested principles that helped people survive the unthinkable and thrive afterward. The first source of meaning is through creative values, what you give to the world. This could be your work, your art, your contribution to society. But here's the crucial part that modern self-help gets wrong. It's not about finding your passion. It's about finding how you can serve something larger than yourself. The second source is experiential values, what you take from the world. This includes love, beauty, truth, experiences that connect you to something transcendent. Frankl wrote that a single moment of genuine love or awe could provide enough meaning to sustain someone through the darkest times. But the third source, this is where Frankl's genius truly shows. He called them attitudinal values, the stance you take toward unavoidable suffering. This was his greatest discovery from the concentration camps. Let me break this down step by step, because this knowledge is usually only available to people who spend years studying logotherapy. In the camps, Frankl witnessed something incredible. Prisoners who found meaning in their suffering, who chose to help others, who maintained their dignity, who refused to let circumstances destroy their inner freedom. These people not only survived, but came out stronger. He had a patient years. Later, a woman dying of cancer. She was bitter, angry, consumed by the unfairness of her situation. Using logotherapy principles, Frankl helped her see that her suffering could serve a purpose. She chose to become an example of grace and courage for her children. Her final months became the most meaningful of her life. This changed everything for thousands of people who thought their circumstances made happiness impossible. Before we continue, let me ask you something that might change your perspective forever. What if your current struggles, your feelings of emptiness, your sense that something is missing, what if these aren't signs that something is wrong with you? What if they're signs that you're a human being designed for meaning and you just haven't found yours yet? The technique I'm about to reveal has helped millions discover their unique purpose. Here's exactly how Frankl's logotherapy works in practice. Instead of asking, what do I want from life? The question that leads to endless frustration, logotherapy teaches you to ask, what does life want from me? This isn't mystical thinking. It's practical psychology based on a fundamental truth Frankl discovered. Life is constantly presenting you with situations that demand a response. Your job isn't to pursue happiness, it's to pursue meaning. And when you find meaning, happiness follows as a natural byproduct. Now listen carefully, because what I'm about to show you will transform how you see your current situation. Frankl developed specific techniques to help people discover their meaning. One of the most powerful is called dereflection. Instead of constantly focusing inward on your feelings, your problems, your emptiness, you redirect your attention outward toward what you can contribute. He had patients write their own eulogies, not morbidly, but as a way to clarify what they wanted their lives to stand for. He helped them identify their unique strengths and how those strengths could serve others. He taught them to see obstacles not as evidence that life was meaningless, but as opportunities to demonstrate meaning through how they responded. This knowledge is usually only available to trained logotherapists, but I'm sharing it because Frankl believed these principles should reach everyone who needs them. Here's a specific exercise Frankl used with patients experiencing existential emptiness. He called it the meaning inventory. You list 3 categories. First, what you can create or contribute. Second, what experiences fill you with awe or connection. Third, what unavoidable challenges you can transform through your attitude. The next part will change how you see everything that's happened in your life. Frankl made a discovery that shocked even his fellow psychiatrists. People who had endured the greatest suffering often found the deepest meaning. Not because suffering itself is good, but because extremity strips away everything superficial and reveals what truly matters. In his post-war practice, he noticed that patients who had never faced real adversity often struggled more with existential emptiness than those who had overcome significant challenges. Why? Because meaning emerges from the tension between what is and what ought to be. When life is too easy, that tension disappears. But here's the crucial insight. You don't need trauma to find meaning. You just need to recognize that every day presents you with opportunities to choose meaning over emptiness, contribution over consumption, growth over comfort. Let me share one final story that illustrates everything we've discussed. A young woman came to Frankl feeling completely lost. She had a good job, a nice apartment, supportive friends, but she felt like she was sleepwalking through life. Everything felt hollow and pointless. Instead of exploring her childhood or prescribing medication, Frankl asked her to spend 1 week paying attention to moments when she felt most alive, most connected, most needed. She discovered something surprising. She felt most meaningful when helping elderly neighbors with their groceries, when listening to friends work through problems, when volunteering at a local literacy program. Within months, she had changed careers to become a social worker, not because it paid more or offered status, but because it aligned with her deepest sense of purpose. Her depression vanished because it had never been depression at all. It had been meaning starvation. The most important part comes next, and it's something that could change your life starting today. If you're serious about transformation, you need to understand this final principle. Meaning isn't something you find once and keep forever. It's something you must rediscover continuously as life changes. What gave your life meaning at 20 might not sustain you at 40. What matters is developing the skill of meaning detection. Frankl survived 4 concentration camps: Theresienstadt, Auschwitz, Kaufering, and Turkheim. He lost everything multiple times. He rebuilt his life, wrote 39 books, lectured at Harvard, and helped revolutionize psychology. But his greatest achievement was proving that human beings possess an indestructible freedom, the freedom to choose their response to any situation. You have that same freedom right now. Your current circumstances don't determine your meaning. Your past doesn't limit your purpose. Your feelings don't define your worth. What matters is what you choose to do with the life you've been given, starting from exactly where you are today. Here's your next step. This week, instead of asking, "How can I be happier?" ask, "How can I be more useful?" Instead of focusing on what you lack, focus on what you can contribute. Instead of waiting for life to give you meaning, start creating meaning through your choices. Drop a fire emoji in the comments if this resonates with you. Tell me what's one way you could add meaning to your life starting today. And if this video helped you see your situation differently, share it with someone who might be starving for meaning without realizing it. Remember what Frankl learned in the darkest places humans have ever created. Everything can be taken from you except your freedom to choose your attitude. That freedom is enough to transform any life, including yours. But there's something else Frankl discovered that most people never hear about. Something that could be the missing piece in your own search for meaning. In his later years, working with patients who had everything materially but felt spiritually bankrupt, he identified what he called the Sunday neurosis. This was a specific type of existential emptiness that hit people during their free time. When the distractions of work and routine fell away, they were left face to face with the fundamental question of their existence. What am I living for? Many of his American patients reported feeling their worst on weekends and holidays. Times that should have been joyful became periods of anxiety and depression. Why? Because without the structure of daily obligations, they couldn't avoid confronting the meaninglessness they felt. Frankl realized that modern society had created a perfect storm for existential crisis. We have more comfort, more entertainment, more options than any generation in history, but we have less meaning, less purpose, less connection to something greater than ourselves. He called this the paradox of choice, when survival is no longer the primary concern. When basic needs are met, humans must grapple with the more complex question of what makes life worth living. And this is where many people get stuck. In his clinical notes, Frankl documented case after case of what he termed successful failures, people who had achieved everything society told them to want, but found themselves empty inside. A CEO who built a multi-million-dollar company, but contemplated suicide every morning. A famous actress who had everything she dreamed of, but couldn't get out of bed. A retired professor who suddenly felt his life had been wasted despite decades of academic achievement. These weren't people with chemical imbalances. They were people experiencing what Frankl called neurological disorders. Problems not of the mind or body, but of the spirit. Problems that required not medication, but meaning. The breakthrough came when Frankl realized that meaning isn't just a nice bonus for human flourishing. It's a fundamental biological need, as essential as food or water. When people are starved of meaning, they develop symptoms that look exactly like clinical depression. But treating the symptoms without addressing the meaning deficit is like giving someone with scurvy more painkillers instead of vitamin C. This is why so many people today feel like they're drowning in their own lives. They have all the external markers of success, but none of the internal satisfaction that comes from knowing their existence matters. Frankl discovered that humans have three basic needs that must be met for psychological health. The need for meaning, which we've discussed. The need for freedom, not just political freedom, but the psychological freedom to choose your response to any situation. And the need for responsibility, the opportunity to contribute something valuable to the world. Modern society often provides the illusion of freedom through endless choices and options, but it frequently fails to provide genuine responsibility or clear sources of meaning. We can choose from thousands of entertainment options, career paths, lifestyle choices, but we struggle to answer the fundamental question of why any of it matters. This creates what Frankl called the existential vacuum, a sucking emptiness at the center of life that people try to fill with achievements, possessions, experiences, relationships. But nothing external can fill an internal void. Only meaning can fill the existential vacuum. The question isn't whether life has meaning. The question is whether you'll choose to find it.